Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa has decided not to travel to the World Economic Forum held in Davos or anywhere outside the country at the moment. He says he'd like to focus on pressing domestic issues. President Ramaphosa is also preparing for South Africa's chairing of the AU summit in February. But now the ANC's Lekgotla is wrapping up in Irene today with reports of divisions within the party. Could this also be part of the reason why the president is staying put? We're joined for that discussion by political analyst, that is Mr. Sipho Siepe. So thank you so much for your time and welcome to the rundown. Let's just perhaps start with what you know of or what you think may be high on the agenda at the ANC's Lekgotla this weekend, which of course concludes today.
Well, I think the most obvious is the president missing on the Davos trip. This has been an annual pilgrimage that he often takes and that he often enjoys. And it is also there where he tells the world that things have changed. But the fact that he has decided to give it a miss indicates the extent to which he is worried, the extent to which he wanted to guide the ANC and the divisions and to bring the notion of unity. And his pronouncements have moved more towards that. And also committing the ANC, the language was that the resolutions of NASREC will be implemented because this year is a year in which the NGC of the ANC is going to meet. And one of the things that it's supposed to do is to reflect on whether those who are deployed in government have remained true to the resolutions of the ANC. So that he would miss a meeting that he considers to be important simply is indicative to the extent that says, I'm not so sure about my footing. So you need to be in a better space to be able to command your forces, and that's why he stayed. And then the second issue that he was captured is the concern that had been raised around Pravin Gordhan. Pravin has projected himself as Mr. Fix. But we know now that things are not working. ESCOM is not in a better state than it was a few years ago. But it will be difficult for the president to remove Pravin Gordhan. People seem to forget that the turnaround or the strategy to turn around the SOEs, including ESCOM, was a mandate that was given to Ramaphosa when he was a deputy president. So if he had failed if you were to remove Pravin, people would be going back in time to say, but you also failed. So you would actually understand why the president would be reluctant to accede to the comments and the calls and demands that says Pravin must go. Because if Pravin goes, the same logic would easily be applied to him.
Right. And let's talk about, the president for a moment there, especially in his stance as the president of the ANC. I mean, we've seen the ANC there receiving heavy criticism around, the the January 8th statement where, we saw the pictures and the images coming on, critics saying that, it wasn't as packed as usually it is when it comes to these commemorations and celebrations around January 8th statement. Criticism on the statement itself, say that the speech was all over the place with promises and no clear, concrete plan on how the ANC plans to tackle, amongst other things, ESCOM, as well as the SAA. I mean, are we seeing the president there in a conundrum in his position as well as the president where there's heavy criticism coming his way?
Well, I think there is a certain degree of unfairness in terms of criticism. But one could also say it is well-deserved because he created that expectation. Remember, when you present yourself as a messiah, people expect or their expectations becomes exaggerated. So he came up with concepts like New Dawn. He came up with concepts that we're going to do things faster, we're going to be smarter. So he engaged in a campaign that was a mere public relations exercise, and people bought into it. And some of them bought into it because they disliked the former president. So now that he's in the saddle, he can actually realize that things are not about the person. It is about the structures. It's about systems. It's about processes. So, but he's unable to get out of that space to say, guys, I think I now know better. But also, as some people have chosen to forget, he was in the presidency as a deputy president for 5 years. So if there had been failures, he must also assume the responsibility of him being part of the collective that failed to turn things around. So that the things are not turning around is part of the inertia that he was part of. So he finds himself unable to explain. That's why his speech in Kimberley was really empty. It was all over the place. It was not saying anything new. So you saw a president who was saying, I need to please these people because this year is going to be very important year. So I don't think the new dawn, it has actually become the task. And he's concerned about that. That's why he had to miss the Davos trip. But the ANC is in tatters. It is not a party that is a machinery. That's why even the people who are supporters of the ANC chose not to Kimberley.
All right, but we have to leave it at that. But thank you so much for joining us and your time. Those resolutions coming from the ANC's NEC meeting and Lekgotla in Irene today are expected to, of course, be announced after they've commenced their last day of the meeting today.